So I am about to unbox a Panasonic UB820 and I figured you may want to watch. I'm also going to set it up and test it. And while I do that, I'm going to talk about some other 4K players I've had in the past, which is a Sony X700, a Sony X800M2, and for one day I had a Panasonic UB450. So while I set up this 820, I'm going to talk about the other 4K players I've had and my experiences with them and pros and cons with them and my overall opinion of their performance. I'm not going to do like a technical comparison because you can do that yourself and people have already done that, and also AI exists. So this is just going to be my feelings and my experience for what I use them for. So if that sounds interesting, then come on in. So I ordered this from Best Buy during the Black Friday sale and it was $4.19 after tax. But I had a gift card that I discovered from an old Geek Squad claim. And so I actually only paid $140 for the UB820, so I am super excited about that. The last time I got a UB820 was about 3 years ago, and it was refurbished from Amazon, and it has been working like a champ. So after my 450 attempt failed miserably, I decided I should just do this. And I discovered the gift card and I was like, you know what, let's do this. So here's the outside of the box, which you can see anywhere, but just give you a quick look at it. So the first 4K player I ever got is the Sony X700. And the reason I got that is because it was one of the cheaper ones on the market, and because I had all Sony stuff, Sony receiver, Sony TV, and I really loved how nice they play together. And I had that one, and the reason I'm using past tense is because, spoiler alert, it's dead. So I made another video about that, setting up the UB450 and discovering that the Sony's dead. So, but the reason I got it, like I said, it was a budget player. Just arrange this so you can see a little bit better. Budget player, and all my other Sony stuff played really nice with it. And honestly, for a little over like it was like 5.5 years, it was fine. It's fine for playing a disc from the beginning to the end and not messing with it in the middle, and I will go into that a little bit more. Here's the remote that comes with the UB820, by the way. Here is the Amazon off-brand replacement remote that you should definitely get if you do the UB820. Here they are side by side. So back to the Sony X700. So one of people's major complaints about the Sony X700 is that you have to toggle Dolby Vision on and off. And honestly, I don't think that's that hard. You just go into the setup, you go to the screen menu, and you just go to screen and you select Dolby Vision, turn it on or off. Now, the main thing with that, though, is that you have to remember to turn it off when you are watching not Dolby Vision content, because it will super distort the colors if you leave it on. So you just need to remember to turn it off. But honestly, it's not that big of a deal. So I think that is way overblown. One thing I love about the 820 is that it automatically detects it, but that's more of a convenience than like a necessary feature, in my opinion. Okay, and before I really get into any pain points of the Sony players, I want to talk about the other one. So I got the X800M2. And the pros of that one is that it has a nice metal body, and it's actually really, really sturdy. Speaking of sturdy, whoa! Is that bowed or is that an optical illusion? Does that look kind of bowed right there? Okay, let's try that at a different angle. Does that look bowed? Or am I just special? Thought it was bowed right there. Maybe not. Okay, I really like the build of the Sony X800. Why is it not focusing? There we go. You can see the UB820 on the front. Here's the back. And with the Sony, so the reason I got the X800M2 is because I got this other TV in my bedroom on Black Friday like 5 years ago. It's a Sony A8H OLED. And so I needed another, I wanted another 4K player. So I got the Sony X800M2 because it had the sturdy build and I thought it would be better, but honestly it performs exactly the same as the X700. It just has a really sturdy body, which I love. And that player has the same complaint as other Sony players, is that you have to toggle the Dolby Vision on and off, which again, I think is overblown and not a big deal, but you have to remember it or colors will look messed up on non-Dolby Vision stuff. One of the other complaints about the Sony players that I think is way overblown is that 100 gig discs skip and freeze. And I just have not had that be the case with both players. Now I have had skipping and freezing occasionally and you just reset the player. It has not been a big deal, but the real deal breaker for me that made me originally upgrade to one of these bad boys, the Panasonic UB820, was because when I'm doing my 4K movie reviews and I have all my notes in my notebook and I have the remote and I'm standing in front of the TV and I want to skip to certain parts so that I can talk about that part with it behind me. And I found with the Sony players, as I'm rewinding and fast forwarding and pausing and rewinding, fast forwarding and pausing, that both players would absolutely freeze up all the time, and it was making it take forever. And I have very limited time because I'm busy working dad and got 5 kids. So that was the huge pain point of the Sony players, was just that they just couldn't perform. And I feel like that's kind of a basic thing you need a 4K player to do, is rewind and fast forward. Now most people just started at the beginning and watched it all the way through. If you do that with those players, it's totally fine. And if you don't mind toggling it back and forth with Dolby Vision, I think they're fine. Okay, before I plug in the UB820, let's just take a look at the manual real quick. I always like to keep manuals and flip through them. This one seems pretty limited with content, so we'll just do a quick flip through. All the boring safety stuff at the beginning. Love how they're telling you how to dispose it when it's brand new. It's like, I don't want to dispose of this. I want to have fun with it. Here's the stupid remote that it comes with. Remember to replace it. I'll just get it nice and big there. If you need to pause it, if you need to refer to the menu, you can save this video or the pamphlet, whatever it is. And you can pause it right here so you can read this stuff. Okay, good. So I'm just going to remove the dead, rotting carcass of my Sony player that I used very lightly for a little over 5 years. And it's given up the ghost. It just sticks on the Sony logo. So it's kind of a bummer. I'd probably just use it indefinitely. But this being an OLED TV, I do love the HDMI optimizer, and I do love that you can pick the you can tell it what kind of TV it is. So what I'm doing here is I'm plugging in just an audio cable to go to my receiver, or audio, yeah, HDMI, and then this other one is just going straight to the TV. So I like how premium players have, well, a lot of players, that X700 had it too, have 2 HDMI outs. I think that's very important. There we go. That was a tight plug. It's very nice. I'm not used to a new player like this. So having a UB820, the things that I have absolutely loved is just the performance. This thing has performed flawlessly. I can like I said, for my reviews, I'm always rewinding and fast forwarding and pausing. And it just takes it like a champ, which I really appreciate. There we go. And one thing I've loved about the UB820 is the HDMI optimizer on HDR10 content that is too dark. So the original Star Wars trilogy, as well as Edge of Tomorrow, those movies are way too dark in my opinion. The HDR, just with my experience, needs a little bit of tweaking, and I found that this player does that so well and makes them easy to watch. I actually made a whole video about the HDR being too dark on A New Hope and how I adjusted the settings, so you can go check that out too. All right, we're going to plug this thing in for the first time. I'm going to turn on the TV so it can say hello to its new little friend. Plug it in for the first time. Saying please wait. All right, so it looks like it was loading for a little bit and then decided to go to sleep. Let's go to the dedicated HDMI 2, which is where it's at. Turn it on again. Okay, there we go. It popped up. So we are going to go through the settings. Let's test the tray first. Just use my replacement remote because I like it so much better. There we go. Looks and sounds good. Did I already say props to Best Buy for putting this over the packaging so that people don't see a 4K Blu-ray player sitting on my porch? That was really cool they did that. Now, one thing I definitely have to give to the Sony player over this one is I love, like the X800, I do love the build quality of the Sony. Not gonna lie, I missed that. Okay, here we are in the settings. All right, we'll try to do this pretty quick. Okay, resolution. Let's go auto. 4K 60. Yeah, why not? All right, on this one, I'm just going to choose that top one. Oh, we're doing a connection check. There we go. Okay, we'll just leave that 24p output. That is one of my favorite things about this player, is that it can play at 24 frames per second, which is how the movie is put on the disc. And that's, okay, what do we got here? Auto video only or video plus audio. Okay, I'm definitely going to select this top one, because like I said, I have one HDMI cable going to the receiver, which is a Sony STR-DG1060, and then one going to the TV. So HDMI audio is audio only, so we're good there. Dolby Vision, you set this to on, but you don't have to worry like the Sony one. If you put a non-Dolby Vision disc in, it will still play normal, so that's good. HDR10 Plus on, doesn't really matter because I don't know if my Sony TV can do that. Advanced settings, color mode, always a fun place to go. I'm gonna go auto. Okay, we're looking good. Okay, here we go. HDR TV type. This is important for me. I am going to go to OLED. Heck yeah, that is so cool. Okay, looking great. Let me know if you have different preferences on these settings, and I can definitely reevaluate. I'm not married to these settings. Bitstream. There we go. That is what we need. Bitstream on the digital audio output for the subtitles people. Okay, yep, looking good. 3D, not worried about it right now. Everything's in English. Network. Oh, I guess we might do a firmware update here. A lot of people are afraid of the firmware update because they're worried it's going to remove the region-free abilities. And just so you know, this is not the region-free version. This is the region A version. However, there's I made another video where I show you how to get around that on certain discs. So looks like you have lots of videos to watch in my 4K player playlist. Okay, let's go down to systems, or system, singular, to playset, display. Yeah, we're good here. I think there was one thing I was supposed to turn off in here, maybe the VR link. I can't remember. Bright, quick start. I think we'll do on this guy. Remote control, whatever, firmware. Okay, system information. We are on firmware version 1.76. So we are going to do a quick check to see if there's a firmware update. So for that, I need to go to network. So I'm going to pause the recording because you don't need to see my network. Actually, you can see this part. Okay, so we are not doing wired. We're going to do wireless. Oh, yeah, there we go. Network settings. I guess I need to actually select wireless. It's a little weird, but sure. So this is because I'm not connecting a LAN, because I'm not going to do any streaming to the player. Streaming is going to go through the TV, which is just fine. Wireless settings. Okay, so I'm going to go through this and then we'll come back. All right, we are connected to Wi-Fi. So now we're going to go check for a firmware update. Under system and right here. Update now. See what we got. Looks like I have to agree to terms and conditions. Sure. Okay, current version is 1.82. Well, the current one is 1.76, but the current one out on the market is 1.82. So yes, I want to download that. So let's download this thing really quick. So here's what the screen looks like during the download. And then down here, this is what the front of the player looks like during the firmware download. All right, so while this downloads, let's just talk a little bit of my opinion, which may not be a very good one, but I'm not like a pro here. So downstairs, I have the UB820 hooked into an 85-inch, it's like 950H, I think, Sony. I have to check. And then this is the 65-inch A8H OLED. So the Panasonic downstairs has one HDMI going to the TV and one HDMI going to a Sony HD ST5000 soundbar that simulates Dolby Atmos. So it has the up-firing speakers and the side speakers, and it reflects off the wall, and it actually does pretty good. It does not compare to a 7.2 surround like I used to have before we moved. And then upstairs, we have one going to the TV, and then one going to the receiver, like I said, and then I have a 3.1 setup. So I have the Sony center and bookshelves, and then the Sony subwoofer as well. And the reason for the soundbar downstairs on the bigger TV is just because there's not room for the wires and the speakers there. It's kind of a family area. And then for the bedroom, I haven't done speakers in the ceiling yet. Maybe I will one day. But the 3.1 on here sounds incredible. So in summation with the Panasonic, my favorite things are the HDR optimizer, and the fact that it just performs amazingly. Like all the fast forwarding and rewinding and skipping everything, it just does perfectly. Versus the Sony, and then the automatic Dolby Vision, where the Sony would freeze up on that. But I think a lot of the complaints of the Sonys are overblown. I think, I'll tell you this. I've defended the Sony for a long time. Now I have one that is dead after 5.5 years of light use. My X800M2 is still running absolutely great. So I've defended them over the years, being like, yeah, it's a good player, when in forums people are trashing them and saying you can only get the 820. So I think if budget's a super concern, or if you find one at a good deal, you can get it. And if you're just watching movies all the way through, I think you'll be okay. However, that being said, with my journey with the Sonys, I wish I would have just got the 820 first, to be totally honest with you. It is just an all-around better player. And then especially that it can make HDR that looks a little too dark, brighten it up a little bit, like Star Wars and Edge of Tomorrow. However, the Star Wars 4Ks are some of my most disappointing 4Ks. This is a totally different topic, but 4K 77, 80, and 83 are my favorite way to watch Star Wars now. So going back to the 450, so I had the Panasonic 450 for UB450 for one day, and it was basically a lemon from eBay. And the reason I bought it on eBay was because Amazon was all out, and I just wanted to get one. And I know eBay has like buyer protection policies, and if you did watch that last video where I went through my troubleshooting of the UB450, I did get my full money back, and I was able to return it, no problem. Seller paid for shipping, so they took care of it like immediately when I brought it up. And ultimately, after doing a little more research, I know it's a little backwards to buy and return something and do a little more research, but I decided that the 820 is a better fit for an OLED TV. So I actually ended up spending a little bit less, but I did have that gift card from Best Buy from a previous Geek Squad claim that was my original money just several years ago. So technically I spent a little bit more, but I'm much happier with it. I'm already used to the 820 from using it. I have the replacement remote already, and I fully anticipate just being able to use this thing and just run it into the ground and it not complain. Here's my question for you. What 4K player do you have, or are you shopping for one? Also, what movie do you think is the perfect movie to test out a new player to make sure it's working right? Okay, here is the player. It is flashing update. There's no video signal going to the TV. And this is the player working its way through the update. But I did hear from a ton of you that have the Panasonic UB450 that yours is working great, and you've had it for years, and I'm really happy that is the case for you. And I guess ultimately I just decided to get another 820 for myself. Basically just going back on that thing I said about how with the Sony players, I wish I would have got the Panasonic from the beginning. So getting a new player up here, I just figured after returning the 450, I just figured I should do this so I wouldn't regret it. Also, these are the movies that have been taken upstairs for movie watching time, so kind of a cool selection. Here's some more on a shelf. So those are just movies that haven't got taken back to their home on the shelf in the movie area after coming up here for movie time. You can see it says update 5 out of 5 now, so it just progresses through those numbers. Pee break while I wait. All right, back from the pee break, and it is still saying 5 out of 5, so that update is taking quite a while. So the player, it just flashed the word finish, and now it's flashing welcome, which is what it does when you first turn it on. Okay, I guess we have to do settings again. So, oh gosh. I mean, just going through it all really quick. So I actually put no on the network settings. So I think it lost my network settings, which is fine because I'm happy with this latest update. I have it on my other player. But if they do make an update that makes it so I can't do the region free hack anymore, then I would rather my system didn't just go get it automatically. So we are going to check the firmware version and see if it's the newest one. And there it is, 182. Or is it 186? Okay, it looks like it actually did remember my connection, which is fine. I'm not afraid. I can turn it off. I can quit anytime I want. I can turn it off if I want to. So I'm going to go into the system and just double check that there's not a new one. Okay, and this is what it says if it's up to date. Okay, it looks like it kept my settings after the firmware update, so that's good. Okay, it's actually running really smoothly and really quickly, so we are going to put a disc in and see how it goes. And why not one of my very favorite movies of all time, and becoming one of my favorite 4Ks of all time, the director's edition of Star Trek the Motion Picture. Let's put this bad boy in. Here, bonus quick tip here. If you want to know how many gigabytes a disc has, count these rings that have little barcodes. If you see 3 rings, that is a triple layer disc. So we have a triple layer disc right here. And here we go. Okay, looks and sounds great. Push display on the TV, see what we got. Dolby Vision, there we go. Here we go, one of my favorite shots of all time from this movie. Looking great, moving very smoothly. Let's push the status button on the remote, see what we get. Push it again to get that. And there's also the playback info button, we're gonna push that. So you get the info, which is awesome. You get all the playback info if you do that. And if you push the playback button again, you actually get more. You get this stuff here. All right, well that is my unboxing and setup and my thoughts on some other players I've had for several years. So let me know if you have any questions about those other players. Like if you're thinking of buying them, like I said, I've had them for years. So I'd be happy to share my opinion. But I think the complaints of the Sonys are overblown. However, the UB820 is absolutely the way to go if you don't want to have to buy another one again. And thank you so much for everybody that watched that troubleshooting video of the UB450 and gave me awesome advice. And it was awesome interacting with you on that one. Okay, thanks for watching. We'll see you on the next one. Bye.